Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Jen Birchfield, your coach with Pure Life Massage and Ayurveda, and this is week 2 of Pure Health. This week's habit is early to bed. So I just want to take a minute to back up to last week's habit, which was earlier, lighter dinner. Remember that each of the 10 habits build on one another. So looking first at, this is one of the tools that you have um, in your Student Resources Hub. This is your weekly meal planner. If you can take the time to think ahead about what you're going to be making for each meal, and do some batch tasking. So if on the weekends you can do your shopping, when you're very motivated, you can think about what it is that you're going to want to cook during the week. Then you can put together your grocery list, do your shopping, bring everything home, and do a little bit of preparation in advance. And that might be washing and chopping vegetables, storing them in airtight containers so that they're ready to go during the week. We want to make your earlier, lighter dinner easy to happen. I want to make it so that you're not really having to think about it at all, that it becomes less of a thought-invoking process and more of an automatic process. The success of all of our habits is automation. So what can we do to make your dinner time more automated? First thing you've got to do is plan your weekly meals. So you have this, go ahead and make 9 copies. And what you can do as you start to fill these out each week is reuse them. So keep them in a folder, pull them out for the next week. You've got your entire meal plan ready to go. Thinking less about the mundane, and this is what I'm talking about with our meal planning. The less that you can think about your task that you have ahead of you, the more automated it's going to become. So with dinner, for example, if you know that on Monday you're going to have Cobb salad and on Tuesday you're going to have French onion soup, Wednesday you're going to have Caesar salad, etc. If you don't know the recipe by heart, go ahead and put a little link for that on your dinner sheet, or go ahead and attach your recipe cards to that. And this way, when you come in, you've already got your vegetables prepped, you already have your plan, and all you have to do when you walk in the door for dinner time is throw everything together and put it on the table. The less that you have to think about dinner, the more easy it's going to be to make it happen automatically. So thinking about the Ayurvedic clock once again. We want to do our dinner time, as we discussed, in that sunset period. So we're thinking of that as around 6 p.m., that downstairs on the clock, the sunrise sunset period. It's not a hard 6 p.m. It's whenever the sun is going down, and of course that might be earlier in the winter time. So having that lighter dinner around 6 p.m. to enable your digestion to easily make its way into the kapha period of time. Remember that kapha is the water and earth elements, and it's really mucousy and watery and pretty dense and stable. So we don't want to have our heavy meal beforehand, as we discussed. And we want to take advantage of this time to set into the fatigue of the evening. I want to invite you to the idea that fatigue is a pleasant thing. When we don't resist fatigue, it becomes our friend, and we can naturally move our way into the more restful sleep, really taking advantage of that heavy period of the evening to become deeper, heavier, more restful. And remember that that doesn't include laying down on the couch for 4 hours after dinner. It does include some light activity because we're wanting to move a little bit of that density rather than letting it stagnate. But even though we're doing a little bit of light movement, it's not intense. And we're not taking in television, we're not taking in screen time, we're not doing work cycles. We're doing time with family, taking advantage of that cohesive energy, allowing ourselves to become heavier and quieter during the kapha time so that before 10 p.m., before the witching hour, we are well ready for bed. We're well into the nighttime cycle. We are probably, hopefully, already in bed by 10 p.m. and ready for sleep. So looking at that pitta cycle, remembering that starts at 10 p.m., if you allow yourself to move into the pitta energy, which is when the clock shows us it's moving from the descending to the ascending energy. If you allow yourself to move into the pitta cycle while you are still awake, what you're going to notice is that your energy, you start to get the second wind. You start to feel like you can do heavy thinking tasks. You might break out your computer at this time. You might be engaged in the television. You might be looking at your smartphone. When we do that, we engage the brain and we engage the fire energy. And the fire energy is not subtle. It's not sleeping energy. It is productive, awake, assimilating energy. We want to allow that energy to be doing the cellular repair work and the metabolizing of our lighter dinner while we sleep. We don't want to use it to create a second wind and to stay awake. So what we have in our society is a chronic sleep deprivation issue. Our society has conditioned us, of course, with our electronic era, to become more awake and more stimulated and stay awake. The CDC tells us that school-age children need at least 10 hours of sleep per night, that high school children need 9 to 10 hours of sleep per night, and that adults need a minimum of 7 to 8. In 2005 to 2007, adults were getting less than 6 hours of sleep per night. This is what our research tells us. And in 2009, we have research that told us that 31% of high school students got 8 hours of sleep or less. So as a culture, we are sleep deprived. It's not just you. It's not just a personal issue. As a culture, we're sleep deprived. We have a lot of research on the science behind sleep deprivation and what that does to our health. One of my resources is Chris Kresser. You can go to chriskresser.com to read a lot of different research on health in general. But on sleep deprivation, what he tells us is that when you get less than 6 hours per night chronically, you develop low-grade inflammation in the body. You also develop worsening insulin resistance. You increase your risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. That less than 6 hours of sleep per night impairs your thinking, your stress response, and your immune response. You will tend to vacillate greatly in your emotions and have weight gain. So the inflammation is the starting point in the autoimmune cycle, and insulin resistance leads to weight gain. Chronically, the entire cycle leads to autoimmune disease because the insulin affects your hormone production. Hormone production can be like thyroid production. This can make you hypothyroidic, and then that can lead to Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and other autoimmune diseases. That's just one pathway. The compound effects of lack of sleep. Lack of sleep compounds like interest. And so one of the things that I want you to think about is how long it is that you have been sleep deprived. If you've been sleep deprived since high school, if you go back to our chart on how much sleep you need, and you think back to high school, maybe you were an athlete, maybe you were an overachiever, and you probably didn't get 10 hours of sleep per night. If that's the case, you've probably been sleep deprived ever since high school. You set up a pattern and you stayed with it. That compounds over time. And like I was just saying about sleep deprivation leading to autoimmunity, lack of sleep leads to systemic inflammation. If you've ever had really a limited amount of sleep, like just a couple of hours or a lot of interrupted sleep for whatever reason, you'll notice the next day that you just feel kind of sore. And that soreness is systemic inflammation. If you have sleep deprivation that happens over time, repeatedly over time, then you're going to develop compromised immune system from that chronic systemic inflammation. This leads to endocrine dysfunction, which leads to autoimmune disease. Going back to the Ayurvedic clock, when you borrow sleep time from the evening, so if you're not going to bed until 11, 12, 1 a.m., you are borrowing your energy from the next day. So if you think about your energy as having its own integrity, what you want to do is set up yourself to have good, high integrity with your energy cycle. When you wake up in the morning, you want to be refreshed. You want to wake up and be ready to seize the day, be ready to have a great start to a new day. You want your feet to hit the floor and be ready to exercise. You don't want to feel sluggish, like you're dreading the day's beginning. And when you stay up until 11, 12, 1 o'clock, what you're doing is you're borrowing time from the early morning cycle, which is where you get your energy. We're going to talk about that in the next habit. But for right now, just know that the earlier that you can get to bed, the better off you're going to be. We know that sleep before midnight counts for double. So if you're going to bed at 9, you're functionally getting 6 hours of sleep before midnight. It has to do with your circadian rhythm and how your body can go into its deepest rest cycles. And we know that we go into our deep rest cycles when we go to bed early. If you are staying up until midnight and you're right at that peak of the pitta cycle, what you're going to notice is a lot of dream disturbed sleep. If you're not aware of your dreams, then you might just notice unrest. This is because you're going to sleep during the nighttime peak of bile production. There's a lot of heat in the body, and you really can't get into the deep sleep cycle when that is the energy that you are partaking in when you're trying to wind down for rest. So like I said, sleep before midnight is worth double. Let's think about the clock and the energies of Kapha and Vata as far as sleeping and waking. So Kapha has that downward heavy moving energy, and I'm sure it makes sense to everybody why you want to wind down for sleep and get ready for bed during Kapha time. If you can fall asleep during Kapha time, you may find that it is easier to wind down than if you try to fall asleep during the Pitta time when you have that elevated energy. Now, assuming that you can get a full 8 hours between, let's say, 9:30 p.m. and 5:30 a.m., you can wake during Vata time. So look at the energy of Vata. Notice that dispersed arrows, those outward flying arrows that are moving everywhere. That is the dispersed energy that is taking advantage of that air and ether elements that are present during Vata time. you want to be able to wake up before sunrise. Remembering again, that's not a hard 6 a.m., 6 p.m. down at the bottom of the clock. It's really sunrise, sunset. So if you can awake before sunrise, you can take advantage of that light, easy energy. So I want you to think back a little bit on your early 20s, late teens, early 20s, and how you may have lived your life. You probably noticed that you might have felt fatigued after dinner during that coffee time. And you might have even thought to yourself, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. I'm really feeling tired. And then if you were in college and surrounded by lots of high intensity energy in the dorm rooms, you might hit 10 p.m. and be ready to go out with friends, or you might have been ready to burn the midnight oil and write a paper, staying awake all hours of the night, taking advantage of that nighttime pitta cycle. Then maybe you went to sleep, had some crazy dreams, had that pitta disturbed sleep, and woke up perhaps in the vata time. Now, of course, in your early 20s, you would have looked at the clock and said, it's 5 a.m., what am I doing awake? But you notice that you feel wide awake. You notice that you were, it felt like if you did wake up now, you'd be fine. But you said, oh, it's too early, I gotta go back to sleep. And then you hit the hay again, and you wake up during coffee time and you're dragging and you're like, oh man, I just feel tired and sluggish. This is because the sleep cycle was chronically off during that period of your life. If you're still doing that, it's time to change. It's time to start to become the person that goes to bed during the coffee time, wakes during the vata time, take advantage of the heavy energy, take advantage of the light energy. So how are we going to develop bedtime rituals? Rituals are a repeated process, and rituals are done with sacred intention. And the point of bedtime rituals are to create that energy integrity that we talked about. So here you have your early to bed flow chart. This is going to be one of the things that's in your Student Resources Hub. And I want you to print this and work on this, hopefully after you finish this video when your motivation is really high. So looking at this early to bed flow chart, we started with our early dinner. And the point of the early dinner is that you aren't putting in anything too heavy. You have a light load carrying into the evening. Your body's not consumed with digestive energy. It's being able to develop the energy integrity around getting fatigued. And getting fatigued, again, is this incredibly pleasant sensation when you're not fighting it, when you're not giving yourself screen time and television, and compromising the feeling of fatigue. You will notice that, as you allow it to take over your body, it'll lead into a much deeper sleep pattern. And so let's develop some rituals that will allow you to take advantage of that natural fatigue that sets in during coffee time. So after you've had an earlier, lighter dinner, I want you to put on your chart what time is early for you. What are you going to shoot for? Even if you're using Kaizen and you're just backing up that earlier, lighter dinner, what are you shooting for as a goal? Then you're going to engage in an activity that brings you joy. Remember that coffee time is that cohesive energy that's really great for bonding with your partner or your family. Something that really allows you to feel your life purpose, feel like you're enjoying your life. So that might be the light walk after dinner to help with digestion. It might be some restorative yoga. It might be connecting with a friend on the phone or reading a book. For us, it's a lot of maybe a light walk after dinner and then a lot of snuggle time with my daughter. We might take in a half an hour of TV, but that's in the early part of our evening. We don't want that to be the biggest part of our ritual. And we don't want that to become the consuming source of energy. After this, you want to do something kind for your body. So, what kind of things can you do that are kind for your body? One thing that you might do is a little bit of self-massage. And so you can take your sesame oil, which is a really warming oil. If you're a pitta type, you might need coconut oil. But take one or the other and do a foot massage. And you can use essential oils as well. Essential oils such as lavender, clary sage. What other essential oils are really good for nighttime? I got my notes here. Cedarwood. So clary sage, cedarwood, lavender, these are great nighttime oils. Now notice for some people lavender is really awakening, for others it's really restful. So find out what kind of person you are. Take a little bit of that, add it, two drops added to a handful of massage oil, and just rub your feet. Give yourself 15 minutes to really get into the tissues of the feet, to rub in between each bone of the foot, and rub that oil in. And what you're going to find, because the feet are extremely porous, is that they're going to absorb the essential oil, and it's going to aid in you coming down, bringing your energy down from whatever you've been engaging in during the day to prepare yourself for the restful sleep cycle. Another kind thing you could do for your body is you could take an Epsom salt bath. I really like 2 cups of Epsom salt with 1 cup of baking soda. This is a really good muscle recovery technique. So if you are doing some of your heavier workouts, if you're doing any kind of training, or if you're like me, as a massage therapist, I just use my muscles a lot and I get really fatigued. Taking an Epsom salt bath is a great way to bring the energy down. And because of the high magnesium content, it allows me to develop a more restful state before bed. So magnesium aids in creating some tiredness, just some rest. And it also, of course, loosens the muscles. So a bath, a foot massage, something my daughter sometimes asks for is for me to massage her. So we can do her bath, I can massage her, and then I can take my bath and massage myself. Just some really nice nighttime rituals that allow yourself to be kind to your body and to tap into the natural fatigue that is happening during kapha time. So notice on our flow chart we have the how does your body communicate end of the day fatigue. Start to tap into that this week. Start to notice what it is that your body does. I notice that if I ignore my fatigue and I keep going, that I get really tight and sore, especially in my shoulders and my neck, sometimes in my hips and my low back sacrum area. So that's a sign for me that I've gone too far and that I'm not allowing my body to rest when it needs it. So just notice those end of the day fatigue signals and start to make a note of them. Make a choice. We have it in the pink diamonds. Make a choice to honor your body's needs. This is a big deal. Making that conscious decision to say, yes, I'm going to allow myself to start to turn down at 8:30, 9 p.m. The iPhone now has a sleep timer, and it's in the same section as your waking alarm. There's a bedtime timer there. You can click on that. You can set how much sleep you want. And of course, we want 8 hours. So set your sleep and it will back you up to when your bedtime should be, and it just gives you a pleasant little alarm to tell you it's time to start getting ready for bed. So when you don't make the choice to honor your body's needs, notice, go down in the chart from that pink diamond. You're borrowing against tomorrow's energy for today. And I know a lot of us have a nighttime productive cycle. We're going to talk about how to handle that. But don't borrow tomorrow's energy. You need that to start the day great tomorrow, which is our next habit. Start the day great. What you want to do is honor your body's needs and get ready for bed. So we have the rub your feet or use oil, meditate, giving thanks, leave the day behind. Maybe you can do the exercise called recapitulation, recap. This is where when you lay down, you just take no more than 1 minute to run through the entire day's events in your mind. You don't replay the entire thing. You just, in other words, you don't replay a specific event. You just allow yourself to replay the actions of the day, like a little video in your mind. The more you practice it, the faster you're going to get at it. But what it does is it lets your mind integrate the day's happenings without attaching to anyone, so that you don't lay there and go, oh, that conversation I had with Sue at work today, I should have said XYZ. Instead, you've replayed it as a quick movie reel in your mind, and your brain has everything it needs to start to integrate that occurrence. And remember that when we honor our body's fatigue and we go to bed early, we're going to feel great tomorrow. So one of the things that we need to experience in life is the concept of spanda. And what that basically means is pulsation. It's the idea that we have poles, that we can go to both ends of the spectrum, and that by experiencing both ends of the spectrum, you are able to get the best of both things. So you have probably often heard or have said, you have to experience the low lows, the sadness, in order to experience the joy and the happiness. So this is the same concept. With Spanda, we want to experience true exhaustion and true fatigue in order to experience full energy. We also need to experience, when we were talking about earlier, lighter dinner, and allowing those the time to transpire in between meals. We also want to experience true hunger in order to experience true satiation. So thinking about that, thinking about the meal cycles, if you're constantly feeding yourself as soon as you're just 20% hungry, your insulin never has time to recover, you're constantly putting pressure on your insulin and glycogen cycle in order to produce and reproduce, and you're not giving your digestion rest in between. And the chances are that you're never going to really know what your body needs, because you're always just going on the next craving. So you're never going to feel truly satiated. And when we think about this with our early to bed habit, when we think about this with rest and with experiencing the feeling of true fatigue, if you can allow yourself to dive into that, if you can allow yourself to be enveloped by the feeling of fatigue, then in the morning when you've had a full 8-hour rest cycle, you're truly going to feel energized. So the concept of going to one pole and then the other is really important in Ayurveda in order to experience full energy integrity, the full energy cycle, in order to experience your greatest health. So as we were talking about our flow chart on our early to bed, after you've done your ritual, your nighttime rituals, and again, this week you're going to decide what your rituals are. You're going to write them down, and you're going to start to put that into practice. Then commit to doing lights out at the time that's going to allow you a full 8 hours. So for me, I wake up at 5:30 every morning. By 9:30, it's a non-negotiable. I have to be in bed. I set my bedtime alarm for 9 p.m. so that I know that I need to go ahead and start doing my rituals. If I know that I want to have a longer ritual, if I know that I want to include a bath in my nighttime, then I'm going to start to do my ritual cycle as soon as I put my daughter to bed at 8:30. And so those are my person trigger, my time trigger. Those are and my immediate action beforehand triggers for starting my early to bed ritual. So commit to lights out at a certain time. And when you think about your best sleep, I want you to observe whether or not you are a light sensitive person or a sound sensitive person, and some make some allowances for that. So if you're a light sensitive person like me, you may need to have a sleep mask. You probably need to have blackout curtains, and you need to make sure that you can really get a fully dark room so that you can get the best rest possible. I have both and I use both. I'm also a sound sensitive person, and somebody who wakes easily to sound disturbances might take advantage of the Ayurvedic way to plug your ears is not to use earplugs, which can be a little bit difficult on the ear canal, but rather just take a little bit of a cotton ball, soak it in some sesame oil, and place it in the ear. And this way you are both nourishing the inside of the ear with the sesame oil, as well as getting a really insular sensation, and it makes the sleep cocoon effect happen. It makes it easier to get into the deep sleep mode. So as I was just saying, you need to make the habit of early to bed happen with your trigger. Remember that no habit happens without a trigger, and that the reward that you're looking for will come after the habit. So in this case, the reward is deep, restful sleep, waking up fully energized in the morning. Now, what is it that you're looking for? Go back to what your big why is. If your big why is that you want to lose your muffin top, you're looking to lose 10, 15 pounds, then remembering our insulin cycle that is compromised with lack of sleep, you're going to want to really start to harness this habit, because the reward is losing weight, and going to bed early is essential for beginning to correct your insulin cycle and lose weight more efficiently. My triggers, again, for getting to bed early are, remember that there are 5 ways to trigger a habit. It's the person, the place, the emotion, and immediately preceding event or time. And so I'm using several. I'm using time. I'm using an alarm to schedule my time. I'm using my daughter as a preceding event, knowing that I have to put her to bed at a certain time triggers me to go to bed at a certain time. I'm using the preceding action of putting her to bed, or also of doing my nighttime ritual, in order to do the next part of the ritual, to turn out the lights, to get in bed at a certain time. So all of these are the trigger, which goes to the habit of early to bed, the restful sleep, and the reward, whatever that is for you. That may be energy, that may be that you're wanting to exercise in the morning, that may be that you're wanting to lose weight. All these things will happen with our early to bed. All right. So remember last week we started to talk about defining your identity. And we talked a little bit about what is a night owl and how a lot of us define ourselves as a night owl. And if you're shifting from the night owl identity to the early bird identity, what does that say about you? How are you going to make that shift? So a night owl is, I'm classifying it as somebody who goes to bed at 11 p.m. Because if you're going to bed as early as 11 p.m., you are going to bed during the pitta time. And we know that that's not going to lead to the most restful sleep. We also know that if you're going to get 8 hours, it means that you're not going to be waking up until 7 a.m. And so you're starting into kapha time already then. You're trying to wake up during the heaviest time of day. So that doesn't make sense. That doesn't give you the most integrity to your energy cycle. So anyone who's going to bed after 11 p.m. is a night owl. And if you're going to bed later than that, you're really in the night owl category. A lot of us have had this as a creative and productive time of the evening. So anyone who's a mom will often say, that's my only time to myself. That's the only time that I'm without the kids after the kids have gone to bed, and I can take care of me. I can clean the house. I can do my emails. I can catch up on work. And there's a real lack of any bedtime ritual. It's usually stare at the screen until you're too tired to stay awake anymore, and then you're sort of falling into bed and waking up fatigued. So when you're shifting your identity from what does a night owl do to what does an early bird do, you have to ask that question. What does an early bird do? What does that look like for me? How does an early bird prepare for bed? How does an early bird prepare for the morning? And so an early bird may lay out their clothes for the next day. They may pre-pack lunches for the next day. They may go to bed early, of course, so that they have full energy for the next morning. An early bird, most importantly, moves that productive quiet time from the nighttime, that 10 to 2 a.m. cycle, all the way to the morning. And so if you're that mom and you're taking advantage of the nighttime to get your stuff done, start thinking about, okay, well, if I went to bed when my kids went to bed, if I went to bed at 8:30, when could I wake up? If I went to bed at 8:30, I could wake up at 4:30, and sometimes I do. And when I wake up, the earlier I wake up before the dawn, the more I feel like I am light throughout the day. It's like I wake up during that light energy time of Vata, and I can carry that with me all throughout the day. I also am extremely productive. And again, if you have read anything on the most productive people, if you have read anything about the habits of productive people, of the most successful people, you will see that all of those people wake up before dawn. They all exercise before dawn, and none of them get on the computer first thing in the morning. They all use that time for self-care and for organizing themselves to face the day. So how are you going to be successful in shifting your identity? I mean, these are big changes. This is not just changing your bedtime. This is shifting who you are to become an early bird, to become the person who catches the worm. So tips for success. Number one, ask for specific help. And so this may be saying to your partner, I'm making a shift from staying up late to going to bed early. And so what I'd really like is for you to maybe kindly remind me, if you see that we're coming on 10 p.m., can you just kindly remind me that I wanted to get in bed early, I wanted to get up early the next day, and that it's getting close to 10 o'clock and I might want to start thinking about bed. If you have that conversation and you tell the person, Specifically, this is what I need, and I need it this way, so that it doesn't become a begrudging poking fun at you. It doesn't make you feel like you're doing something wrong or that you can't be successful. That it really comes from a place of your partner trying to help you to continue to be successful in the habits that you're establishing for your health and well-being. And if you ask for it that way, trust me, you will receive it that way. The second thing is to remember that you are malleable. You can thrive at any age. And I see this with yogis. I see this with people who start practicing yoga when they're 40 and 50 years old, where they literally just seem to reverse their aging process. I mean, they become more flexible, they start to eat differently, they start to crave different exercise, they start to breathe differently, and in doing so, their entire identity shifts and their entire aging process shifts. And so remember that a lot of the way that we age is a choice. And if you have been sleep deprived since you were in high school, you are going to need to do a lot of time of early to bed in order to recover from all those years of sleep deprivation. Ayurvedic medicine actually tells us that for chronic issues that you need 1 month to recover from every year of the chronic issue. So in my case, for me, I have had chronic fatigue issues. I mean, really, it's adrenal fatigue. It's not chronic fatigue. It's adrenal fatigue that came from me being really stressed out as a business person and then as a single mom. And those things led to autoimmune disease for me. So I'm a living, breathing example of what I'm telling you not to do. And I know that it took me about 7 years to become, to develop the autoimmunity. I know that that's how long I was living with adrenal fatigue issues and how long that I had symptoms that were increasingly worsening. And so even though I have been living the habits for a really long time and my health has done a complete 180, when I say a really long time, it's been about a year for me that I've been definitively living the habits without a lot of compromise. 12 months is starting to just be long enough for me to heal most of the issues. So just think of it that way. You need to institute the habit for long enough in order to recover from all the years. If you've been sleep deprived since high school, that might be 20 years or more. So think about 20 months of good, restful sleep every night in order to get yourself healed from the compound effects of that chronic fatigue. So remember that you're malleable, that you can thrive at any age, that you can make the choice to turn into an early bird and change these habits now, and that those compound effects will no longer be with you. Who do you want to become? Your beliefs can change at any point in life, at any time that you choose. So decide who you want to become and start making steps towards becoming that person. So how badly do you want deep rest? And is this an issue of, are you somebody who has problem sleep? Or do you have problems sleeping through the night? Do you have a problem falling asleep? Do you have issues staying asleep? So let's just think about the 4 biggies. Caffeine, chocolate, sugar, and alcohol. I would be remiss if we had this conversation and didn't talk about the 4 biggies. So if you are somebody who is waking and using caffeine to wake up, or using caffeine for the 3 p.m. boost to stay awake during the day, you're compromising that energy integrity. You're compromising that entire cycle. Caffeine Coffee in particular is extremely drying. And an interesting thing about caffeine is that it becomes addictive after just 3 days. So, in a 3 day cycle of giving into caffeine, you will become addicted after just that short period of time. This is also why when you give up coffee, often that third or fourth day are the most difficult days because it takes that long for it to exit the system. So, knowing that it takes that long to exit the system is to also know that it is affecting your sleep when you choose to have caffeine, even if it's the first thing that you do in the morning. And oftentimes, when you're a morning caffeine, morning coffee person, you are an evening alcohol person. So it's a use a substance to lift you up, use a substance to bring you down. And I know for many years, and in fact, it's still a difficult tendency for me to veer away from, having morning coffee and having an evening glass of wine, not overdoing it. I've never really been more than a 1 cup of coffee a day person. But having the coffee alcohol cycle is really detrimental. It's not that you can't ever have them, it's that you don't want them to be a tool for how you wake and how you wind down. And when you notice that alcohol has become a tool for how you disconnect, how you wind down, how you come off the edge of the day or the hard meeting, then it's probably time to shift your thinking and your use of alcohol. So chocolate and sugar are much the same way. In fact, a lot of us, of course, if we're having coffee, we're often having sugar in it to make it less bitter. Chocolate is the same thing. If you're having a post-dinner chocolate dessert or a grazing after dinner chocolate cookies, then you're combining caffeine, sugar, chocolate. Chocolate has theobromines, which is the same thing as caffeine, and it's not the same thing as caffeine. It acts similarly to caffeine. It's also in coffee. They're a stimulant. And so using chocolate as a stimulant or as a stay awake agent is really detrimental. So how bad do you want deep rest? Are you going to use caffeine, chocolate, sugar, and alcohol to stimulate you, calm you, disconnect you, reconnect you, to motivate your ups and downs throughout the day? Or are you going to allow yourself to begin to feel into your natural fatigue, your natural wake, your natural productivity periods, your natural slumps, and just start to build the habits that allow you to have less up and down in between those and more efficiency in that energy cycle, energy integrity. So if you wake in the night, here are some tools that you can use. Meditation, mantra, counting exercises. Some people like to have their phone nearby with headphones plugged in if you have a partner. You might like to turn on your meditation app, something like Insight Timer. Now, I don't recommend really looking at your phone. I just am recommending that you maybe have this queued up and ready to go if you know that waking during the night is an issue for you. And there are some really short nighttime meditations that are on there, relaxation meditations that are on there. Binaural beats is a sound mechanism. And so you can find free binaural beats soundtracks on YouTube. And what that does is it allows a certain number of frequencies into one ear and a certain number into the other, and your brain, right left brain, gets confused and it starts to shut down. It starts to induce the theta delta brainwave states that you want for meditation and sleep rather than those alpha beta brainwave states. So you can use meditation apps, you can use binaural beats, And also yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is another type of yoga that's really just a deep, long meditation. It involves doing some tensing and releasing of muscles, some different kinds of breath work with those tension and releases. And you can also find that on YouTube. You can also find those on Insight Timer and other meditation apps. So all of those are things that you can kind of plug into rather than plugging into a phone or a television if you wake during the night, that will allow you to go back to sleep. Using a mantra for meditation, this is just simply repeating a phrase or a word over and over again. So an English mantra that some people like is I am that. I am that. It just reminds you that you're connected back into the bigger picture. And you can just repeat, I am that, over and over again. You can also repeat, I am breathing in with every inhale. I am breathing out with every exhale. This is a really nice nighttime meditation that will just unite you with the rhythm of your breath and hopefully allow you to fall asleep again. A Sanskrit mantra is Soham, and that's I am that in Sanskrit. So you can just repeat Soham. You can do it with each breath, or you can let go of the breath and just repeat Soham over and over again. These are bija sounds, just really pleasant seed sounds that the minds can shut down because it's not tuning to thought, it's tuning to these sounds that don't have a lot of meaning. Counting exercises. So it's the same idea as counting sheep. Counting exercises might just be counting up to 100 and then backwards down from 100. It might be doing counting with breath. And so that's your deep breathing exercise, in which case you can count inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 5, exhale 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you repeat that over and over, making that exhale just a little bit longer than the inhale. You can also do inhale 1, 2, 3, hold 4, 5, exhale 6 through 10. And once you repeat that, it's not that your mind may not wander, but you can bring your mind back to that breathing exercise. Once you continuously repeat that, you're going to fall into that fatigue state and fall into sleep much easier than waking and fighting the that wake cycle during the night. So going back again to earlier, lighter dinner. And why are we going back again to earlier, lighter dinner? Because if you don't do early dinner, you're not going to do early to bed. If you have a big, heavy, full stomach, you're going to be motivated to stay awake, or that food is going to give you excess energy that you don't need at nighttime. So tips for an early dinner, again, making it easy, going into the mundane, not thinking about the mundane. Aim to be in the kitchen by 5 p.m. Focus on veggies, soup, salad, roasted vegetables. Again, you can roast vegetables in the AM. You can leave them at room temperature all day, and you can throw them into a salad as soon as you walk in the door at night. Organize and prep on the weekend. Do your grocery list. Go back to that meal planner. Have that filled out. Even if you don't stick to it, you have an intention, and it's going to make you more successful. Plan a to-go night. If you know that there are nights that you're not going to be home until 6 p.m. or later, plan on having it to go or delivered so that you are still at home, you're still able to take care of to fall into that fatigue after dinner, you're still able to do after dinner light activities, but you're not relying on yourself or your partner to prep your food. And again, menu planning with your family, divvy up the responsibility. Talk with your partner about doing different things on different nights. My daughter is 6, and I finally got her into the kitchen to help me. Literally last night, she sat there. I set out all the ingredients in front of her, and with my back turned while I was chopping, I said, add a tablespoon of this, do 2 tablespoons of that, and she made an entire bowl of sauce for our stir fry. So, divvy up responsibility according to who can do what and make it happen. So again, remember to please go to bed during kapha and wake during vata time. Set your sleep alarm so that you have a bedtime alarm and plenty of time in that bedtime cycle to do your nighttime rituals, and wake during vata. See how much more energy you have when you just start to wake up before 6 a.m. or before sunrise. And remember that during winter, right now we are the time of this recording, it happens to be February. We're in the end of the Vata cycle, heading into the Kapha cycle of fall, winter. That is the Vata and Kapha seasons. So it is naturally more dry at the end of Vata season, heading into the wet part of winter and then spring. It is, of course, darker outside. It is a time that's designed for more restful sleep. So take advantage of it. Allow your body to do its natural fatigue cycle. Take advantage of longer sleep cycles in the wintertime when it's dark outside. And wake up during Vata time. Harness that sun's energy because we don't get as much during winter. Make sure that you're waking up for the dawn, that you're able to be awake to do sun salutations in the morning, which of course we will talk about in the next couple of habits. Please don't forget to do your early to bed flow chart. So this is what it looks like, not blown up, in your student resources guide. Create your rituals, be specific, include your triggers for each habit. Remember, no habit happens without a trigger. So include the rituals or the triggers that you want for each habit that's going to develop your pre-bed ritual. And I want you to post your steps on the forum. So fill this out and then put it on the forum. And let's hear from everybody as to what you're planning to do. If you're already doing some things, tell me what's working for you. Tell us what's working for you. Take each other's ideas and put them into motion with yourself. See if you can get creative in your nighttime rituals and allow that to be something that brings you joy. So we have a small steps chart that's also in your student resources guide. I want you to use this to set up your desires, your goals, your outcomes. So if you're desiring to go to bed earlier, then the Kaizen suggestion, remember, Kaizen is just those small steps for small improvements. So go to bed 15 minutes earlier each month and hold yourself accountable for that and be consistent. So if you were a night owl and 11 p.m. was your night bedtime, then back it up to 10:45 this week. Back it up to 10:45 this month if you have to. Maybe you can do it week by week for a while to at least get up to 10 p.m. and then stay at 10 p.m. for the next month or two. If you want to start develop this identity as somebody who is an early bird, instead of watching TV, read before bed. So what is the Kaizen way to make that shift in your habit? You don't have to say no TV ever and I'm going to read this book and then it's boring and you're regretting your decision and then it's not successful. Remember, you have to want to do it in order to make it successful. So read 2 pages before watching TV. Make that the goal. And then if you want to read more, fine. If you end up wanting to turn on the TV, fine. But at least you started with the goal of 2 pages. That's the Kaizen way to start to back yourself into making your evening rituals more conducive to becoming an early riser. We have the evening rituals and routines guide. So fill this quick guide out. Put in, what you usually do after dinner, what your body wants to do after dinner. So often there's a discrepancy there. Start to tap into that. What my soul wants to do after dinner. I find I probably want to meditate. I definitely want to spend time with my daughter. Like, that's not negotiable. It's not negotiable for her either. That's something my soul desires. So that's what I would put in that quick guide. I want you to put down what you desire. And notice what the difference is between what you're usually doing and what you want to be doing. What does your body crave? And then there's some ideas there that you can start to institute for small Kaizen steps towards creating a nighttime ritual. Do's and don'ts. Put this on your refrigerator. Do listen for your body's fatigue. Do plan ahead. Do take baths. Do take walks in summer. Massage your feet. Meditate and give thanks. These are all great ideas. Don't blow off your fatigue. Don't be irregular with TV. Don't eat a late dessert. Don't burn the candles at both ends. I know you're laughing now, but eventually we're getting around to it. Habit 10 is easeful living. And so we're building. Even though this is just week 2, we are building towards having a more easeful life. So don't shun early to bed. So we talked a little bit last week about BJ Fogg. And BJ Fogg is the Harvard researcher who talks about motivation. He talks about triggering habits. That's where our behavioral research is coming from. So this tip sheet, again, it's in your resources, but want to start to think about what are some actions you want to take when your motivation is high, and what are some actions you want to take when your motivation is low. So right after this video, your motivation is probably going to be high, and you might be geared up, ready to take advantage of some of the tools that you have to develop your early to bed ritual and your early to bed routines. So when motivation is high, that's when you want to do the hard things. And some hard things that you can do is to do the things that are going to structure the desired behavior. So if you want to lose weight, you might put your shoes and your workout clothes in the bag for the next morning. You might schedule the trainer for every day for a week so that you can get moving on it. For early to bed, when motivation is high, you may want to go ahead and set out your calendar and the items that you normally might do in the evening and block time in your calendar for doing those things in the morning instead. So that might be a difficult thing to do that's easier to do when motivation is high. Do the hard things that reduce the barriers to future behavior, i.e. buy your fruits and vegetables on the weekend when you have a high motivation period, bring them home, wash them, put them in the fridge. One of the suggestions that I love is having your fruits and vegetables in mason jars ready to go in the door of your refrigerator. So when you look in your fridge, you've got your carrots that are cut up, you might have apple slices with a little lemon juice on them. Everything that's there is easy to grab, and you can go ahead and knowing that it's there allows you to make healthier choices when you're hungry and you're ready to make that early dinner. Do the hard things that increase people's capability, i.e. learn a new recipe. When you're first practicing a new recipe, it's difficult and you have to keep referring back to the recipe card, but after you've repeated it and repeated it and repeated it, it becomes easier. So practice that new recipe when motivation is high. When motivation is low, do easy things. So think that most of the time, your motivation is low. we only have these brief little periods. They might come once a day, they might come a couple times a week that are like, whoa, I got so much done. I was so motivated. Wow, I was productive. So plan on being in low motivation and plan to do the easy things that are going to help with the desired behavior. So trigger an easy structured behavior change. Do the easy thing that is the smallest step. And you've predetermined it. So remember, we wrote out our Kaizen suggestion for the new behavior. These are the easy things that you do when your motivation is low. You're like, go to that sheet. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't feel like this. I'm going to sit here and binge watch TV. Well, instead, I've already written down, oh no, I'm going to read 2 pages. And maybe by reading 2 pages, you determine that you're really exhausted and you're ready to go to bed instead. So use that stuff that you've predetermined to trigger your habit when motivation is low. Do tiny habits, i.e. a 1-minute meditation. You don't have to shoot for 20, you don't have to shoot for 30 minutes. Just commit to 1 minute. And again, those apps like Insight Timer, they have 1-minute meditations on them. So just do 1-minute little practices that allow you to start to key up for your bigger habits. Baby steps for long-term change. That's Kaizen's slow, steady progress. What was that? The tortoise and the hare. Slow and steady wins the race. So we're in a race to develop habits that last a lifetime. Slow and steady improvements, just little baby steps. Tiny habits grow naturally, whereas big things sometimes feel overwhelming. So take the tiny steps. So before I close out this week's video, let's do this desire exercise together. So right now, break out a sheet of paper. And I want you to think about how it is that you want to feel. Write down 4 words. It can be 6 words. It can be 3. Write down somewhere around 4 words that are how you want to feel. So thinking kind of big picture, thinking long term, thinking about how you're going to feel with all of your new habits automated, thinking about what your motivation is, what your desire is. How is it that you want to interact in the world? How do you want to experience the world? What are your deepest desires? So maybe it's feeling easeful. Maybe it is energy that is consistent. Maybe it is joy. Maybe you want to experience longer periods of joy and less depression. Maybe you want to feel calm. Perhaps you have experienced issues with anxiety and you want to just experience a feeling of calm. So just take a moment and write down around 4 things that you want to feel. So now circle the 1 or 2 that jump out at you. So maybe it's ease. That's a big one for me, so I'm going to use that. And just close your eyes. And gather yourself into the sensation of feeling your keyword, ease, for me. And breathe into that. Just get acquainted with that feeling. What I want you to be aware of is that you can call forth that feeling anytime. The habits that we are developing are going to allow you to experience that feeling more frequently than not. So go forward this week, remembering the feeling of ease, joy, calm, serenity, and practice that little 1 minute centering on that desire anytime that you want. Call it to mind anytime that you want. The more you practice, the more successful you'll be. So that is all for this week for Earlier to Bed. Remember to please post what you're going to do for your early to bed flowchart. You can even post about the desires exercise if you like. And I will see you or talk to you on this week's call. Namaste.